Hello, everyone. We are Five Writers, 5 Minutes, where five very experienced kids authors chat about everything we've ever learnt about writing. So hopefully this will be useful for you. Now, normally Tristan Bancks joins us, but he is unable to be with us today because he's very busy. And so we are joined by the very clever, very wonderful Sue Whiting. So my name is Deborah Abella.
I'm Sarah Armstrong.
I'm Leanne Tanner.
I'm Zanny Louise.
And I'm Sue Whiting.
Oh, I nearly cut Sue Whiting off. Sorry, Sue. So today we're actually talking about, are you a pantser or a plotter, and does it matter? Now, a couple of times on this podcast, we've talked about different ways of approaching writing and the fact that there is no one way. There's no way to be a writer. There's no way to write. But what is really interesting, I think, is always learning about how other people approach things. So Sarah, can we start with you? And are you a pantser, someone who just gets a vague idea and then off you go, or do you plot and plan before you start?
I started off as a pantser, like flying by the seat of my pants. And I think that was because I got too tangled up in myself trying to plan. So the only way I could write it was by just free writing, and I'm a big fan of free writing, into an unknown future of the story. And it was completely unknown. And, I wrote a whole book that way. I would say now I'm sort of in between. I would say what I do now is I get a situation in mind, which basically means someone's got a problem, because we know you've got to have a problem at the core of a story, give your main character a problem. I've got a situation and I kind of know what I want the ending to be, and I really have no idea what's going to happen in the middle. And I just start writing. And then as I write, with a bit of a flying by the seat of my pants approach, I move in and out of plotting. So I will step back and do a bit of planning and plotting, and then I move back into a just free writing. Then I step back and do a bit more sort of planning and plotting. And I use sometimes I'll use a template, something like Save the Cat, which is useful for long projects, or just think about, what does my character want here, and how's my character changing? Some of those fundamental questions. I sometimes get out big sheets of brown paper and draw all over it with a marker. So I would say the short answer to that is I do both, but at different times.
That's so interesting, Sarah. I kind of started out in a completely opposite position to you. I started out with my fantasy trilogies as a dedicated plotter because it was much too scary for me just diving into the story. And plotting helped me figure out if there was actually a book there, if there was a good story there before I spent lots of time writing it. But even then, I would always come to some place in the story where an amazing idea that was different from the original plot would come flying at me out of nowhere, and I would end up chasing that idea to see where it went. Then I came to writing A Clue for Clara, and it was completely different from anything I'd ever written before. So the first thing I actually did was spend some time figuring out the voice of the story, what the narrator sounded like. And then I plotted a bit, and this is pretty much what you're saying, Sarah, I plotted a bit, I wrote a bit, I plotted a bit, I wrote a bit more. And I discovered that is actually a lot more fun for me than plotting the whole lot first. So that's what I do now. I do a mixture of plotting and pantsing. I think the main thing is to figure out what's right for you and what's right for this particular book, because one book might really want to be plotted, another book might really want to be pantsed. So you've kind of got to figure out what works.
I definitely do a combination of those things. I want to have a map. I want to have a little bit of a guidance of where I'm going into this wilderness. I want the signposts, and the signposts are things like, what's the inciting incident? What is triggering this journey? I want to know what the midpoint is. What is going to happen, like that big epic moment, which is going to complicate things even further for our main character. I also want to know my character's transformation. Like roughly, I will discover things along the way, but I want to know some big transformative things. And I might not know the climax or the resolution, but I want to know roughly this big mountain that I'm heading towards. So what I do is I write a synopsis, pretty much using the Save the Cat template. And I kind of have those key beats in there. But the thing is, like you're saying, it changes, because as I'm doing the free writing, as I'm just in there with my characters, in the weeds with them, I'm discovering so many magical, wonderful little moments and interactions or things that aren't working. And I need to go back to that map and kind of re-navigate. So that's kind of my approach, which is very similar to what you're saying as well. How about you, Sue?
Well, it seems like we're all very similar, really, which is that surprising because I do think that everyone has to find their own way, and because we all think differently and we're all different people and we all work differently. But I started off as a pantser mainly because I had no idea about what I was doing, so there was no other, just go with it. But over the years, as I have learned, I have changed my ways. But I've never been an absolute plot everything out at the beginning person. I don't think I could ever be that person because it just doesn't suit me. And so, like you guys, I have to know what kicks the story off. I have to know a lot about my character and what drives them. I like to know a couple of the sort of the turning points, sort of what will probably happen to change things along the way. And I nearly always know my ending. Sometimes I change my mind, but I have to know what the ending is because I often write mystery type things too. So I need to know how it's all going to be solved so I can put in all the clues along the way. And then I feel like I'm a little bit like, the English teacher that has been given a science class to teach for a term, and they're sort of like 2 chapters ahead of the class. And I
Yes.
like that. I'm sort of 2 chapters or 3 chapters ahead of where I'm writing. So I'll a bit, like you're saying, I'll write a bit and then I'll think, okay, how am I going to get to that next turning point? And I'll sort of plot out what's going to happen and I sort of edge that way. So it's a very similar kind of way. But one thing that I always try to do, and this is where the great thing about being a pantser, that spontaneity and excitement and those reveals, those things you don't think about when you're just sitting there trying to work out a story, is I try to keep my mind open to those things and willing to sort of change if I need to.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Story magic.
Yeah, I love all of this because I think we are all different, and I am a plotter. I tried once to pants a novel where I sort of knew the characters, I sort of knew what was going to happen, and I threw away about 40,000 words. So I'm not a confident writer. Like every book I think I write, I think it will be my last book I ever write. I'm surprised that I've gotten as far as I have without someone calling me out. So I need to plot to know that I've got story. But I also actually do, and this may freak some people out, I actually do a chapter breakdown. So I plot so much that I want to know the point, the reason why that chapter exists. So next to me when I write, by the time I've planned all my my whole book, I literally have little chapter cards next to me. And that is because, sometimes if they're on the wall next to me, I'll think, well, that chapter's way too similar to that one. I'm going to merge them or I'm going to get rid of one. So it's like we've been saying as well, make every word count, make every chapter count. And I do need, like a lot of us are saying, those 3 big points that are going to really, like that first turning point that takes us from our first act and hurtles us into our second act. I need to know those 3 big points. So it doesn't matter what you are, a pantser or a plotter. Does it matter? No. What matters is story. Story, of course, is always king. Is it interesting and is it engaging? We are 5 writers, 5 minutes. Thank you so much for listening in today. Thank you so much for your gorgeous feedback as well. We're getting so much lovely, lovely feedback and saying that you're really enjoying this. And we will see you next time. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.